What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Toilet Tales. Stories that felt crappy at the time they happened. Uh, hey, I got one for you. So, when I was young, we didn't have money, and I remember wearing shoes from like used shoes from yard sales and thrift stores. And we didn't have money to keep buying shoes, so when my feet were growing, I had to wear shoes that were too small. And over the years, my toes have come to, they grew underneath each other, kind of like that, because they were just shoved into a shoe too small. And the first new pair of shoes I remember getting were from Walmart, and they cost $10. I was like, wow. They were blue, and they were like either white or silver, and they had like a classic car on the side. When I talk classic car from early 80s, I'm talking like a 50s car or whatever. It was like an old school car. And I remember getting those shoes, and of course I was teased a lot in school because I'd be wearing, shoes with holes in them where my big toes sticking out because my feet have grown and I haven't got no new shoes. So my big toes sticking out, my other toes are folding in underneath each other, and it's just a very uncomfortable situation. So I remember getting that new pair of shoes, and of course, got made fun of. They were Walmart shoes for $10, I believe. If I remember correctly, they were $9.99. And I wore them and wore them and wore them, and it got to the point where they were too small for me. And of course, I asked my mom, can I get a new pair of shoes? These are too small. They're hurting my feet. And we didn't have money for another pair of shoes. So I had to keep wearing them. So what I was doing at school, while I was sitting at school, I would take a pen or pencil or whatever I was using, and I would start pulling the threads of the shoe out. So each day I was pulling a little bit more and a little bit more of the threads of the shoe. And eventually my whole shoe fell apart. And then my mom had to give me a new pair of shoes, or at least a bigger pair of shoes. So I just kept, that's how I got a new pair. Ended up getting a new, finally, instead of wearing shoes that were too small, I figured out if I make my shoes fall apart, she has no choice but to buy me a new pair of shoes. Find me a new pair of shoes. I do remember too one certain yard sale shoe I was wearing at one time, and I didn't wear them for long because they were like 3 sizes too big. I don't know why those were why I had those, and I remember them being like fake Converse. They were just like Converse, but they were like no-name shoes, and they were like 3 times too big. No matter how tight I tightened them, they would just rub blisters on my feet when I was out playing and stuff like that. So they didn't stick around for very long. And I want to say my first new pair of shoes came when I was about 12 years old, somewhere in there. It was from a Walmart, a newly opened Walmart, when we were down at my aunt's house in DuQuoin, Illinois. And I remember in like 1985, of course, the Air Jordan came out, and everybody was talking about the Air Jordan in school. And of course, I asked for a pair of Air Jordans, and that's not happening. So I did not get the Air Jordans. But I do remember getting my first pair of name brand shoes. They were Nike, and we walked down to, if you're in St. Louis and you know Cherokee Street in South St. Louis, we walked down to Cherokee, and there was a shoe store down there. And I don't know where my parents got the money. I think, if I remember correctly, they were like $25 or something like that. 25 or 35. Which what year was, that can't be 35 because I think the Jordans came out and they were 40. So they had to be cheaper than the Jordans. And they were white with a baby blue swoosh on them. And they were almost like a indoor soccer shoe with the kind of little small, teeny, almost maybe even a football shoe. But I remember putting on those Nikes, going to school, feeling so proud. And of course, the same people who always made fun of me for my bad shoes made fun of me because I had baby blue Nikes. And it was just a swoosh that was baby blue, and then the lettering. The shoe was white. So they always had something to say about everything I did. So that was like my first lesson, to know that, you know what, no matter what I did, these people were going to always make fun of me for whatever. But yeah, that was my first name brand shoe. And after that shoe, I don't remember thinking any more about shoes. So I'm guessing that probably happened when I was in grades or middle school. So it had to be before I went to high school. So it had to be probably around 13 years old. So maybe I don't know when that Walmart opened. So the $10 shoe must have been before I was 12. Or maybe that shoe went to the Nike shoe after that. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Don't remember the timeline exactly, but I do remember after that shoe when I was in high school. So I was probably 15, 16, and that's when I hit my growth spurt. And I remember going to Kmart, and at the time they had Pumas at Kmart. And they had the Pumas that looked like the Air Jordans, but they were suede. So you had the all black high top Puma with either the red or the blue Puma mark on it. And I remember my mom buying me, I don't know if it was a sale or what, she actually bought me 2 pairs of shoes. And I got the black with the blue and the black with the red. And I remember feeling so cool. You're like, you know, getting a shoe that I really wanted. I remember wearing those shoes out. I ended up finding like thick shoestrings somewhere, I don't know where, and laced them up with thick shoestrings and did that whole, you know, thing back in the 80s that was done. But yeah, those are my early shoe stories. And all that, I believe, led me to collecting the shoes I collect today. And my favorite pair of shoes, my top 3 shoes, are the Air Jordan 13s, the Air Jordan 3s, and the original Air Jordan 1s. So those are my top 3 shoes. And that collection is an ode to growing up poor and having to wear shoes that were too small, shoes that my toe was sticking out of, shoes that I made fall apart just to get another pair of shoes. So that's the story behind my shoe collection. I think that's internally what made me really get into collecting shoes. So at one time, my shoe collection was up to about 815 pairs of shoes. I sold most of those in 2013. I probably got about 250 to 300 pairs right now. And I don't collect them. If I see something I like, I'll buy it if I want it. But it's more of just a whatever now, not really a collecting situation. But that's the shoes. The story of the shoes on Toilet Talks, or what did I call this? I don't know. Crappy situations. But, you know, you're made up of your bad situations. It's what makes you you. So at the time, it was crappy. But looking back, it's kind of cool. Thanks, everybody.